What if the quiet countryside of Pennsylvania held a secret so chilling it's been buried in whispers for generations? The untold story of the terrifying Rearick family haunting Pennsylvania dives into a dark chapter of American folklore that many don't dare to speak of. This gripping tale isn't just another ghost story. It's a disturbing account of real fear, unexplained events, and a family forever changed by the unknown. If you think you've heard all the scary stories out there, think again. This one will leave you questioning what's truly lurking in the shadows. Long before the Rearick haunting became local legend, the family's presence in the small Pennsylvania town raised questions. The Rearicks weren't originally from the area. They moved to a remote farmhouse on the outskirts of the town in the early 1900s, hoping for a quiet, self-sufficient life. But even in their earliest days there, something about them didn't sit right with the locals. William Rearick, the father, was a reclusive man who rarely spoke, even to his neighbors. He worked tirelessly on the land, but refused to hire help or accept visitors. His wife, Margaret, was a stern, devout woman with a deep distrust of outsiders. The couple had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, who were never seen attending school or playing with other children in the area. They were often spotted working on the farm, always under the watchful eye of their parents. Whispers started to spread. Were they hiding something? The Rearicks practiced an unusual form of religion that seemed to blend Christian beliefs with strange rituals. Some claimed to see them walking in circles around their home late at night, chanting words in a language no one recognized. Others reported flickering lights in the woods behind their house, accompanied by a foul, burnt smell in the air. One farmer said he once heard distant screams in the middle of the night, screams that seemed to come from underground. Over time, the townspeople gave the Rearick farm a wide berth. Children were warned never to wander near the property. Even mail carriers refused to go past the front gate. Still, no one had proof of wrongdoing. Everything that surrounded the Rearicks was built on speculation and fear, not facts. That is, until the winter of 1921. That winter, tragedy struck the Rearick family in a way no one could ignore. One of the daughters, Clara, ran into town barefoot in the snow, screaming that something in the cellar had taken her brother. Her nightgown was torn, and she was covered in bruises. Authorities rushed to the house, but found no trace of the boy. Only a locked cellar door with deep claw marks on the inside, and symbols scrawled on the walls in red chalk. The family offered no explanation, and Clara was quickly taken away to a mental hospital, where she remained for the rest of her life. No one ever saw her again. After that, the Rearick family withdrew completely. The farm became silent, and over the next few years, one by one, members of the family either vanished or were found dead under strange circumstances. The land was eventually abandoned, but no one ever dared to move in. Many believe the origin of the haunting lies in those early years, something the Rearicks brought with them, or worse, something they awakened. To this day, historians and paranormal investigators continue to ask, who were the Rearicks really, and what were they trying to hide? The true horror surrounding the Rearick family began with a single, devastating event, one that would scar the family and the town forever. Though the Rearicks had always been considered strange, it wasn't until the mysterious disappearance of young Thomas Rearick that people began to truly fear what was happening inside the walls of that isolated farmhouse. It was the dead of winter in 1921. Snow blanketed the ground, and the roads leading to the Rearick farm were nearly impassable. That's why it shocked the entire town when Clara Rearick, just 14 years old, came stumbling into the local church during a Sunday service. Her face was pale and frozen, her feet raw from running barefoot in the snow. Her clothes were torn, and her eyes, wide with terror, seemed lost in another world. She collapsed in the aisle, mumbling incoherently about her brother being taken by the darkness beneath the house. When town officials followed her back to the farmhouse, what they found was deeply unsettling. The front door had been left wide open. Inside, the house was in disarray, furniture overturned, candles melted down to their base, and the air thick with the stench of something decaying. But it was the cellar that drew the most attention. The entrance to the cellar was sealed shut with a heavy iron lock, one that didn't match the rustic construction of the rest of the house. When they broke it open, a strange sight awaited them. The walls of the cellar were covered in odd symbols, drawn in what looked like dried blood or old paint. In the corner sat an altar-like structure made of wood and bones, animal bones, they hoped. Of Thomas Rearick there was no sign, not a trace, no blood, no body, no torn clothing. It was as if he had vanished from the earth. Clara, now considered the only witness, was questioned repeatedly. She spoke of her brother having nightmares for weeks, terrible dreams of shadows crawling through the floorboards, and voices that weren't human. She claimed their father had forced Thomas to sleep in the cellar to cleanse him of evil. She said that on the night he disappeared, the family had been performing a ritual meant to banish a curse, but instead something came through. Investigators were skeptical, until Clara mentioned that her mother had started acting strangely after the ritual. She stopped eating, stared at walls for hours, and muttered to herself in a language no one could understand. Days later, Margaret Rearick was found hanging from the rafters in the barn, a chilling smile on her face, and the same mysterious symbols carved into the wood around her. From that moment, the Rearick home became synonymous with fear. The townspeople no longer whispered. They avoided the area entirely. The tragedy not only devastated the family, but set off a series of increasingly dark events, which many now believe were the result of the ritual gone wrong. Whatever the Rearicks unleashed that night in the cellar, it didn't go away, it stayed. And it's said to still haunt the land to this very day. After the tragic disappearance of Thomas Rearick and the mysterious death of Margaret Rearick, the farmhouse became a place of eerie silence, interrupted only by the sounds no one could explain. What followed were months, even years, of disturbing paranormal activity that would cement the Rearick home as one of Pennsylvania's most haunted locations. The first reports came from neighbors who lived nearly a mile away but could still hear the late night screams echoing through the woods. One farmer claimed he heard a child's voice crying for help over and over again, for several nights straight, always around 3 a.m. But when he approached the property to investigate, the crying stopped abruptly, replaced by an unnatural stillness that made his skin crawl. He turned and ran without ever setting foot inside. Visitors who dared to step into the house were often overcome with a heavy, suffocating feeling. One local pastor who was called in to bless the home described an oppressive presence in the living room, saying it felt like the walls themselves were watching. As he began the blessing, the temperature in the room dropped drastically. His cross turned ice, cold in his hands, and a loud bang echoed from the basement. He left immediately and never returned. Perhaps the most terrifying experiences came from a group of paranormal investigators who visited the house in the 1950s. They brought with them recording devices, cameras, and other ghost hunting tools of the era. According to their notes, the team recorded whispers in empty rooms, footsteps circling them even when they stood still, and sudden gusts of wind in sealed areas. One investigator was physically attacked, pushed down a staircase by an unseen force. He fractured his wrist and refused to speak of what he saw at the bottom, claiming only, "It followed me back up." Inside the children's old bedroom, objects were often seen moving on their own. A music box reportedly wound itself and played a haunting lullaby even though it hadn't worked in years. Another visitor swore he saw a child's handprint appear in the dust on a mirror, despite no children being in the home for decades. That same night his car wouldn't start until he left the property. The cellar, however, remained the heart of the activity. Those who entered described hearing scratching noises behind the walls and whispers calling them by name. One man claimed the door slammed shut behind him and wouldn't open until he recited the Lord's Prayer, something he had never believed in until that moment. A few even said they saw brief flashes of a shadowy figure crouched in the corner, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Whatever haunted the Rearick home, it wasn't content with mere scares. It fed on fear, despair, and isolation, and no one could cleanse it, remove it, or explain it. Over time, the property was completely abandoned. The home was never torn down, but nature began to reclaim it. Even today, those who hike too close report strange sounds, sightings, and the overwhelming feeling that they're being watched. The terrifying events that unfolded inside the Rearick home didn't just leave physical scars, they shattered the minds of those who lived there. As the haunting grew stronger and more malevolent, the members of the Rearick family began to descend into psychological chaos. What started as paranoia turned into full-blown delusion, fear, and in some cases, madness. After Margaret Rearick's disturbing suicide, the surviving family members, William the father, Clara, and the two remaining siblings, barely spoke to anyone. They became reclusive not only from the town but from each other. People who passed by the farmhouse described seeing them moving through the property like ghosts themselves, quiet, pale, and disconnected from reality. The once hard-working family was now hollow, their routines broken, their expressions vacant. Clara, having been institutionalized after her brother's disappearance, reportedly suffered from vivid hallucinations. Nurses and doctors noted that she would scream in the middle of the night, clawing at the walls and begging it to leave her alone. She drew dozens of pictures showing a shadowy figure with long limbs and hollow eyes, a creature she referred to as the Watcher. Even heavy medication could not silence her terror. She died in the institution at age 20, her cause of death officially listed as cardiac arrest, though some staff insisted she had no prior heart condition. Back at the farmhouse, William Rearick began to behave strangely as well. Once a stern but functional father, he now roamed the halls muttering under his breath, clutching a Bible that he had stabbed with a knife through the middle. He covered the walls of the house with cryptic scripture and strange symbols written in charcoal. Neighbors who dared to get close said they heard him chanting at night, sometimes alone, other times answering a voice no one else could hear. His final days are a mystery, but his body was discovered in the attic, curled in a fetal position, his eyes wide open in horror. The other two siblings, Samuel and Eloise, tried to hold the family together, but the burden of what was happening eventually broke them. Samuel reportedly ran away in the early 1930s, never to be seen again. Some believe he fled to escape the torment, while others are convinced that it followed him and claimed him elsewhere. Eloise stayed behind but fell into a deep depression. She was found years later in a nearby field, barely conscious and repeating the phrase, "We let it in. We didn't know." Over the decades, the family's downfall has become as much a part of the legend as the haunting itself. Many paranormal experts believe the entity within the Rearick house didn't just haunt the rooms. It fed on the family's fear and slowly eroded their sanity. Others speculate that the Rearicks had unknowingly unleashed something ancient and malevolent through their rituals, and the price was their minds. Whatever the truth, the psychological collapse of the Rearick family serves as a chilling reminder that not all hauntings leave physical marks. Some destroy from the inside out, and those scars never fade. While the Rearick family was unraveling behind closed doors, the surrounding community faced its own battle. between fear and silence. What had once been idle gossip about a peculiar family quickly transformed into something far more disturbing. As whispers of dark rituals, disappearances, and ghostly phenomena grew louder, the people of the town were forced to make a choice: confront the evil, or bury it. At first, neighbors expressed genuine concern. A few brave souls tried to check in on the Rearicks, especially after young Clara's barefoot sprint into town and the sudden death of Margaret. But every attempt to reach out was met with either eerie silence or cryptic hostility. Some who ventured too close claimed they were watched by unseen eyes. One man even reported hearing his name whispered in the wind as he approached the front gate, and swore never to return. Soon the community's fear turned into avoidance. Children were forbidden from walking past the property, and families quietly began moving away from the area. The town's ministers urged people to pray for the Rearicks from a distance. A quiet, unspoken agreement settled in. No one would go near the farmhouse, and no one would talk about what was happening there. But not everyone stayed silent. A handful of locals, mostly younger men and self-proclaimed skeptics, snuck onto the property hoping to disprove the rumors. Most came back rattled, pale, and unwilling to speak of what they saw. One man disappeared for 2 days and was found wandering along the railroad tracks, dazed and unable to remember his own name. His clothes were shredded, and his hands were covered in scratches that looked like they came from an animal, or worse, from a person. Still, despite the growing number of incidents, official records remained scarce. Why, many believe a deliberate cover-up was orchestrated by town leaders and law enforcement. It's said the sheriff at the time received multiple calls reporting screams, lights in the woods, and missing pets near the Rearick property. Yet none of those calls were ever filed in the public record. Local historians discovered gaps in newspaper archives, entire issues missing during the most active years of the haunting. Rumors of this cover-up became legend in their own right. Some claimed the town feared outside media would descend upon them and turn the community into a spectacle. Others believed more sinister motives were at play, that powerful people in the town may have known what the Rearicks had been involved in and wanted to suppress the truth to protect themselves. Even today, long-time residents are reluctant to speak about the Rearick farm. Ask an older local, and they might change the subject or simply shake their head and mutter, "Some things are better left alone." The road leading to the farmhouse remains unpaved and poorly marked, almost as if the town wants people to forget it exists altogether. But those who investigate know better. The silence isn't just fear, it's a scar stitched shut with denial. And beneath it lies a truth too dark for the community to face. Though nearly a century has passed since the Rearick family's dark saga unfolded, their story has never truly faded. It's only grown more haunting. The abandoned farmhouse still stands, weathered and silent, hidden behind thick woods and an overgrown path that most people avoid. But for paranormal investigators, urban explorers, and thrill seekers, the Rearick property is a beacon, a place where the veil between worlds still feels dangerously thin. Modern-day sightings continue to fuel the legend. Hikers and campers who accidentally wander too close often report disorienting sensations, sudden nausea, piercing headaches, the overwhelming sense of being watched. Some have said their electronic devices malfunction near the site, batteries drain instantly, compasses spin erratically, and photos taken in the area show strange orbs or ghostly figures that weren't visible to the naked eye. Perhaps most chilling are the consistent reports of hearing a child crying in the distance, always around the same time, 3:17 a.m., the exact hour when Thomas Rearick reportedly vanished. Some claim to have heard the sound of small footsteps running through the brush, only to find no tracks. Others have captured low, gravelly voices in audio recordings, speaking in a language that doesn't match anything known. In 2004, a group of ghost hunters spent the night in the house with modern equipment. Their footage, later uploaded to the internet, shows doors slamming on their own, whispering voices, and a brief glimpse of what appears to be a pale figure peering from behind a wall. The footage has since been analyzed and debated endlessly online. Some call it fake, but others insist it's among the most compelling paranormal evidence ever recorded. Then there are the locals, those who have lived in the nearby area their entire lives. Many won't speak about the Rearick property, but a few, particularly younger residents, have started to share family stories passed down through generations. One elderly man told a reporter that his grandfather helped build part of the original house and swore something was already wrong with the ground before construction even began. Another woman recalled her mother forbidding her to walk anywhere near the woods at night, whispering, "The watchers walk in silence." Even animals react strangely. Dogs refuse to go near the area. Birds avoid flying over it. And wildlife trackers have found patterns in the surrounding forest suggesting that animals instinctively detour around the property, as if aware of something unseen. The site has become a hotspot for paranormal tourism, with people traveling from across the country hoping to catch a glimpse of the infamous Rearick ghost. But not everyone comes back with stories. They return with something else: nightmares, anxiety, and the feeling that something followed them home. Whether psychological or supernatural, the impact is undeniable. What makes the Rearick haunting so chilling isn't just the past, it's that it never seems to end. Whatever was awakened all those years ago wasn't bound to the family. It was bound to the land. And for those who dare to explore it today, the Rearick legend is no longer a ghost story. It's a warning.